Judah, Jacob, Joseph's brothers, right? Joseph's brothers. Potiphar, big guy, kind of stepping out of the whole family here. Potiphar, I think it's E or A-M, but you get the point. Yeah, Potiphar. Pharaoh, good.
The butler and the baker.
Butler and the baker, thank you.
Potiphar's wife.
Oh, yes. Let's just write Mr. and Mrs. here.
Miss Potiphar.
Miss Potiphar. I like that. Okay. And then there were just a bunch of merchants. What merchants were they?
Ishmaelites.
Ishmaelites. Good. That's an IQ question. GK, general knowledge. Ishmaelites.
What about the Midianites?
The Midianites?
Yeah.
They were also part of this story? Which part?
Midianite, did they sell him?
Oh, they sold them to the Midianites?
Yes.
To the Egyptians, I thought. They brought them to Egypt. The Ishmaelites took them. Yeah. Well, that is, so we have a lot to cover here. Just look at all the people who are going to be playing in this lesson today. But let's just dive deep into the first part, Sunday's portion. So predominantly, we're going to talk about the first number here, Joseph, and all these people who play a role in his life, and how these guys have things going on in their personal lives, and how God orchestrates something so beautiful to come out of all these people trying to do something with it, okay? Family troubles is Sunday's portion. Let's all turn our Bibles to Genesis 37, and I'll have Dennis read Genesis 37, 1 through 11.
And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bela, and with the sons of Zipporah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all the other children, because he was the son of the old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that his father loved them more than all the other brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed dreams, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet even more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, the dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaves arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet even more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and he told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come and bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? And his brother envied him, and his father observed his saying.
Wow. All right. So this is the context. Jacob has 10 sons, all from from Leah and the 2 other concubines. Rachel has the last 2 kids, which is Joseph and Benjamin. After Benjamin, she actually passes away in childbirth, right? And so Jacob, this is Jacob's situation. He is in a place where he had loved Rachel so much, and so obviously there is some amount of extra attention, extra love, extra affection towards her kids, especially all the more because now they kind of are kids who have a single parent, right? And so that is a context where Jacob is. Jacob shows some level of favoritism. First of all, he gets this amazing coat, something like what Thomas is wearing, right? And many colors, it's a coat. And imagine, first of all, you're the sibling, and you found out that one of them got that coat. It looks fancy. I mean, can you imagine all the colors, all the dyes? It had some work to do. He had to get all these threads from different things. He probably asked some of the women and the servants to help him out, and then he makes this amazing coat. In the process, probably everyone is wondering, what is he making this? It was no secret. It's not like he's in the dark. He's making this, and everyone's wondering, man, who is he making it for? Man, I want to know. And who is it going to, and all of that. And probably in front of everybody says, hey, Joseph, this is for you. He's also younger by a significant margin from the rest of his brothers, right? And so my question here is, every brother now has enough reasons to think that Joseph is a snitch, right? As the lesson tells us, he was like coming and telling, hey, this is what all your other sons are doing. And the guys are like, come on, like, not cool. Not cool. You're trying to put us into trouble in front of our dad. What's that? There's a maturity gap, maybe? Huh? And two, now he gives this like, oh, I'm dreaming this dream. First of all, don't say that to your brothers, but he does. But Jacob listens to it. He sees, because he has a spiritual experience with God, and he kind of, a dream, huh? And this is what it means. It makes sense. But he keeps quiet. But the brothers are starting to panic. Oh my goodness. Is he making up a dream and putting this idea into Jacob's mind and having Jacob feel like, oh, that's a dream. Maybe it was from God. I should do exactly what Joseph's dream meant, right? Putting ideas into your dad's head, no, and stuff. So the guys are always in a position where they're at an edge already, okay? So this is the situation. Before we go further, I have a quick question to ask you guys. What are some things Jacob did, and what are some things that Jacob could have done differently here in this situation? Could Jacob have done something different? Partiality, showed partiality. Showed partiality.
He didn't have to be a snitch, but he was.
Huh?
He did not have to be a snitch.
Okay. He did not reprimand Joseph for Joseph being, no, Jacob did not reprimand Joseph for him being a snitch. Okay. Jacob was fine with Joseph's attitude with brothers. Anything else?
Apparently, he paid more attention to his other sons.
Yes.
Rather than just showering it all on Joseph.
Yep. Partial, unequal attention. Anything else? You all have siblings. Everybody here has a sibling. Have you guys felt partiality at the home at some point? Oh, he got something, and why didn't I get it, and all of that. Kind of had that recur in different forms, even in the past lessons with Esau and Jacob and all that. Yes, Thomas.
I have 4 sons,
Okay,
and that was one of my prayers, that I would not show partiality.
great. That's good. Yep. It's we have 2 kids. Yeah, we make sure that everybody gets the same. Jeanette's family also did that. We have. It is an active process, right? You can't just because there's always things because you see a lot of things which you like because of your character. You might like a certain kind of thing which might not be what the kids like. One would like more than the other, if it's sports or how they study or something else. There's always this one, and it's an active process. Okay, so that's good. So Jacob was partially responsible for what happened. That's what I wanted to get at. If somebody could read Matthew 20, 26, and 27. Jenna, if you can get that, Matthew 20, 26, and 27.
Uh, 20 what?
Matthew 20, 26, and 27.
Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave.
All right. Yeah. So the lesson says, who wants to be the great must be the smallest. Who wants to be the smallest will kind of be elevated. Or it kind of says, he who shall be up will come down. Whoever is down shall be elevated. So there is an interesting concept, even in spiritual realms. Okay. In Monday's portion, so this is the concept. There's some partiality going on. This is the family dynamic. Um, Welcome, Angel. Angel is one of the nurses at the interventional radiology department at the VA. So we've been talking about the Sabbath and all, and so happy to see you. So we have a situation in the home. There is a clear divide between the two sons. Now let's go to Genesis 37, verses 12 to 36. Can I have Jeanette read that? Genesis 37, 12 to 36.
Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." So he said to him, "Here I am." Then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was, wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" So he said, "I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." And the man said, "They have departed from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, this dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, 'Some wild beast has devoured him.' We shall see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, "Let us not kill him." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands, and bring him back to his father." So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus this father wept for him. Now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard.
Got it. So there's the Midianites. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. We know the family situation. It's already brewing in the brother's mind that they want to teach Joseph a lesson, right? They don't like him. He is a snitch. He is somebody who's trying to probably take their birthright away because it's the eldest who gets and he's the youngest. They probably have heard of Jacob's story. They are worried about their birthright. And so there is some kind of brewing of anger, frustration, some form of revenge for not getting the coat for everybody. He got the coat. And so they are in the situation, the father sends Joseph to just, hey, go check out what they're doing, see if everything's fine, get some food for them. What options do the brothers have which they could have done differently? We'll come to what they did, but what else could they have done which would have kept their integrity intact but taught Joseph a lesson? I think that'll be interesting to go about. And then we'll come to what actually happened. What options did the brothers have other than doing what they did? Had a conversation. How would that conversation go?
That I want a coat too.
Yeah, we're not happy.
They would have roughed him up a little bit.
Sorry?
They would have roughed him up a little bit.
Roughed him up a little bit, but yes. But have a conversation was one of the options. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? I'm sure there were more options, but they resorted to this, which was a bad option. So there had to be more than one good option, right? Come on.
Why couldn't they ask the father for a tunic?
Yes, they could have inquired, why are you showing favoritism? They could have expressed, that's a good point. They could have expressed to the dad, we don't like what you're doing, right? Nothing was mentioned. Could have spoken to...
Yeah, but why did Jacob put Joseph in that position where he knew his brothers were, had a grudge against him and hated him?
Yes.
And so why would he send him down there alone?
Exactly,
to be
right?
in that environment.
Yeah. So that is tracking back to the original, the starting point of where things went downhill. But why Joseph go check on them? Okay? Why Joseph check?
Well, the father never thought that.
Sorry?
I said the father never thought that his oldest brothers would not kill.
Yes. He underestimated the level of anger and frustration and revenge in the brothers. Good? So that was also a conversation. Jacob failed in that. He should have known what they're thinking. They should have known what he's thinking in doing what he's doing. Just the lack of communication completely on all ends. Nobody knows what the other person is thinking except this band of brothers. They just having the same emotions. One is saying, no, he needs to be killed. Another guy is fighting, oh, no, let's not kill him. Let's throw it down the pit. Everyone's fighting. We got to do something. But unanimously, everybody decide we got to do something with this guy. He needs to pay a price for us. We're brewing. We got to do something about this anger, right? Can I mention that they had anger management issues, right? Anger management.
I think they call that family dynamics now.
I know, how sweet. All right. The last thing I wanted to mention, that's where we will dwell a little more upon. They assumed that they were more powerful than Joseph, right? That is the fundamental problem. They thought they were at a higher plane, higher standard. They were more right of what they were doing than what Joseph is and what Joseph is doing. And everybody's trying to clear the conscience to some level where they all agree. And that's what they came up to, right? Yes.
Joseph has some
Yes.
If he knew that his brothers were feeling that way, then why would you come out
Yeah.
and say, oh, I've got a dream and you're going to bow down to me? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah. But that's what.
he had a part in this also.
Yes. That was when I mentioned. Exactly. So that's where I mentioned this lack of maturity to not know the other people's temperature. That is a quality. You got to know what the other person is thinking, and you're just doing, yeah, I'm going to talk to them. They know who I am, but they still are my brothers. They are, but are they really having the same affection and love that a brother should have towards you? Not a mind reader, not mature enough for that. So, yes. So, I was going through this lesson study, and one of the most important thing was power. Each of us here have some amount of power, responsibility. If you're just a parent, you have a certain amount of power that you can exercise in the home over your kids. If you're in a workplace, if you're an administrator, even if you're not an administrator, in some form or the other, you have somebody working under you, right? Which you can exert an influence. If you are working even in the church, if with responsibilities, you have a voice, you're exerting some amount of influence and power. But the interesting thing about it is power, if not tamed, power, if in the wrong hands, will lead to disaster. And by hand, in the wrong hands, I mean the devil. If your mind is given to the acts of what you want to do with your own sinful state, it is dangerous. And we have this interesting thing. I'm not sure if I've referenced this before. There was a guy, a psychologist by the name of Philip Zimbardo in Stamford University. He conducted this famous experiment called the Stamford Prison Experiment. Okay? What he did, he called a bunch of students, summer vacation, psychology department was there. He said, hey, all you guys go for summer break, but he put out an ad saying, I need 24 volunteers. 75 people signed up. He picked 24 of them. And what did this one? He entire basement of psychology department, he made it into a prison cell. And he called these people, 24 people, the participants. It's a fee. It was a 14-day study. He said, he lined them all up and say, you're prisoner, you're guard. You're guard, you're prisoner, you're prisoner, you're guard, you're prisoner. Go, and tomorrow you'll be wearing prisoner clothes, you'll be wearing guard clothes, you'll be in the prison, you'll be outside the prison. And he said, go, this is your place, and you start working. The experiment was supposed to last for 14 days. The experiment had to be terminated by 6 days. Guess why? The guards, all these guys were some who were actually their friends outside. They knew each other. But when they took on the role of the part that they could exercise, they were nasty. They treated them like really bad. They were like waking them up in the morning, keeping them awake, not allowing them to sleep, making sure they're abusive to them, tying them to the pole. Detailed accounts are written, and later a revised book came out. The book is actually called The Lucifer Effect in 2007. But this book actually, they had to terminate the study. They kind of broke down the cells and brought back the whole department again. He wrote down his findings. But this book came into light during the Iraq War, where all those things that happened in Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq, where all the American soldiers were treating all the prisoners there badly. This study again came up saying, if you have the power to do something, you will do it. The fact that each of us is not another Hitler in the flesh is because you didn't have the opportunity to be one. That is the power of sin. If you have the power, you will be the next Hitler if you live in the flesh. Right? And Abraham Lincoln once said, nearly all men can stand adversity. If you want to test a man's character, give him power. That is the true test of one's character. Because if you give power to somebody, he will exercise it in the way God wants or in the way the sinful flesh will. And so that's what they did. They were not in connection with God, and that's what Joseph had to endure. The consequences of somebody in power putting you through their choices into a place where sin can take you. And so here, so a quick question to just think about for this Monday's portion. How are you exercising God's power given to you as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, as a family member, as a relative in your whole family circle, at work? How are you exercising your power? Big question. Are you using your power in the light of God's word, with His influence in your mind, with the Holy Spirit, or with the bad guy? All right. Any questions on this? Did it make sense? Okay, great. I'm going to skip Tuesday. I will come back to Tuesday because it's kind of happening in the same part. But let's go to Wednesday, Genesis chapter 39. It's kind of at the same period of time when he's taken off as a slave. This is what happens with the family of Jacob, Judah, and Tamar. So I will answer the slave thing, do Jacob and Tamar, Judah and Tamar, and then we have some common lessons from these two stories. Anybody, if you can go to Genesis chapter 39, can I request Tony, if you could read it for us? Genesis 39. We're glad you had the opportunity to join us. Oh, somebody else. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
What verse?
All Genesis 39.
All of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now I know why I got the microphone. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Midianites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. So it was, from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her, to lie with her, or to be with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And so it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her. Okay, I'm sorry. I skipped here. This is so tiny print, and it's kind of dark. Let's see if I can get some more light. And so it was, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, 'The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me.' So it happened, as I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was, when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, 'Your servant did to me after this manner,' that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper.
All right. Quick question. Joseph is in a decent place now. He gets bought by this man named Potiphar. He rises up the ranks. It says God was with him, right? And he exercises his integrity. All that he learned with his dad or in his family in terms of working hard, being smart, and exercising all wisdom, tact, and also just being the guy who is good at everything pretty much. And he rose up the ranks, and he's literally the guy Potiphar has given in charge for all his house. Things are going pretty well. And then comes a difficult situation, right? A woman who's already married hitting on him. While we know what Joseph did, I think the lesson, what I wanted to share is every sin that we commit is going to hurt humans and God, right? Any sin, exposed or non-exposed, is hurting some human being and God. And it's so interesting when sin, an opportunity to sin comes to Joseph, he addresses the two groups of people he would hurt. How can I do this to Mr. Potiphar? One, that's the human who has entrusted. There's trust involved. I'm going to be hurting a human being. And two, and sin against God. Did you have something to say, Dennis? Oh, okay. So just know that that should be our attitude towards sin. Sin causes hurt, period. Right? Anybody disagree? Sin causes hurt, causes somebody to hurt. Think of any sin for that matter. It's either hurting yourself, physically, emotionally, psychologically, hurting somebody else because somebody's emotions and time and investment is made on you, and you're ultimately hurting God for who he wants you to be by the death of his son and what you're choosing to become. So that is something. And he faces a period of injustice, right? Have you been in the situation where I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm getting yelled at? Okay, how does that feel like? Frustrating, I hear a frustrating. Hurtful, yeah. Especially from the people you never expected, right? Yeah. Hurtful. Misrepresentation, is that a bad thing? Oh man, like people think I'm that guy who slept with my boss's wife. How bad is that, right? Misrepresentation. I just want to make sure that I make this comment here. Every morning, especially, I'm sure some of them met. It's like my foster dad. He lives in Florida. We always are going back and forth in terms of fighting over the lesson study. What is this? Why is he doing this? Read his song, and we were having a conversation about this. He brought this up, saying there was a time when Reuben slept with one of Jacob's wives, concubine, a boss's wife. And Joseph does not do that. So that was an interesting comparison there, as how Joseph was more in integrity and standard than Reuben. But yeah, misrepresentation. Anything else? How does it feel? What else that can frustrate you here? Anger. Yeah, of course, yeah. But sometimes we can express all this if we are in a certain authority, right? We have a voice. What was Joseph in that house? No matter how high he was still a slave. And so, no, your defense does not matter. Whatever you say does not matter. You're at fault. That is painful. Isn't that painful? And he accepted it, goes to the prison. And again, there's constant reminders. And the Lord was with him in the prison. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring out, in verse 5, that it says that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Jacob's sake. I think that's a very good principle right there that we need to recognize, and that is, Potiphar didn't serve the Lord. He served false gods, but yet his house was blessed because of Jacob was a believer in the Lord. And so I think when we apply that to our lives, we can be a blessing to those that we work with. We can be a blessing to those that are around us, all because, if we stay true to the Lord, then they can be blessed because of that. And we see that happening here, that, but because of Joseph's sake, his whole household became blessed.
Yes. Thank you. Yep. The other thing I wanted to mention is, have you ever been in this position in life where you actually know somebody, got into school, first go at 16, finished school, college, top of his class, got into the best job out there after college or grad school, found the most prettiest wife, and he has the most prettiest kids, the biggest house, everything is perfect. There's nothing. He's also active in church and all of that. And then we have a guy, B, who's just having his life scale go like this. What seems more attractive, A or B? A. Right? And we all want that. We all like, man, it just goes up. It's just blissful all the time. What does this teach us? Is this a good path to take? Is this what God wants for all? Why does He put us through this pattern of life? Like an EKG machine. EKG, yeah? Builds character, right? And there are these times when I did everything right and still things don't go well. And that is a place where only God can help, right? You're in that place where, oh man, I don't know, but I'm going to stick on. And that is an important, for somebody here who's going through something, you're probably here and it's great. And if you're in God's workshop, you're going to hit this again at some point. And again, God will, but you know that it's going up. It's just these dips of character building. You go down, hit the valley, again come up, experience that glory of what the valley, the workshop work that he did. He's building this machine. So at some point, you'll be ready to fly with this, like you can be like him. So all it takes is perseverance. And there's a verse in Proverbs which says, the righteous fall how many times? 7 times. And all the 7 times he gets up. And that's the success of the Christian life. All you have to do is keep getting up, right? And that's what Joseph does. So now let's go to Tuesday's portion. So we see some amount of like, man, how does this happen to us? Okay? And how does this happen to Joseph? He's a good guy. Why are bad things happening? Now we'll go to Judah and Tamar in Tuesday's lesson. I'm not going to read all of it, but this is the crux of the story. Judah has a wife among the Canaanites. They have 3 kids. The first guy is really bad. He has a wife, her name is Tamar, but the guy is a really evil man, and God took his life. The second guy was told to be Tamar's husband. He did something wrong. God took his life. The third guy is really young, right? Not at a point where he can actually marry Tamar. At this point, she says, yeah, you can marry him. Judah tells you'll marry him and all of that. And there is this time where he completely forgets it. in the meantime, Judah loses his wife, right? And he's sad. And then what happens? It's hard. It's a thin message to kind of get anything out of it. But I have an important point to bring out here. She dresses up like a harlot. He wants to find some kind of comfort over whatever he's grieving. He sleeps with her thinking she's a prostitute. And then she later finds out at some point she has this baby bump after a couple months. And he's like, hey, you slept with somebody else. And she comes and shows the very things that he leaves behind as a sign of her reward, which is a goat. And then she calls him, you're more righteous than I. It doesn't make a lot, like, why is he sleeping with a prostitute? Why is she dressed up like an harlot? Why would she sleep with her father-in-law? Like, there's just all these questions which come up to us. And I was just wondering, imagine, is there a more dysfunctional family than this? Right? It would be probably the greatest soap opera hit ever if you make this into a TV show. It's like, it's wild. Sleeping with your father's wife, one of the sons. And then there's this guy, Tamar. But I was thinking, like, why is this happening in their house? I was just like, me and my first dad, he mentioned this to me, saying, this whole situation in the family happens when there was not a Bible. One, if you had a camera on you all the time, or people are always talking about you, I bet you will be a better person than not having a camera always pointed at you. None of these guys knew that they will be read by 6 or 7 billion, how many ever billion people have come after them for years on end, right? So there is no sense of, they just thought they're just like us. Do you think my name is going to be on any book? No. So I'm just going to live the way I want. And that's how many people live, right? Unless you get some attention. Oh, I need to kind of live a normal life and a good life. Two, imagine you guys come to Sabbath school and then we say, we don't have a Bible. No Bible. We're just going to read the lesson. We have nothing. And so the Bible back then was all Jacob. Jacob was the Bible. Whatever he said is what people did. And so think about this. Imagine who you would be if you did only what your parents told you. No Bible, no Sabbath school, no education. And some of us are converts from other religions too. Can you imagine that? There's no book to read. All that is what comes out of Jacob's mouth, right? Is it possible that Joseph was probably better in integrity because he did not go to the fields and he spent more time with his dad and he probably listened more to Jacob's from what was coming out of Jacob's mouth than the others. And so he was more of integrity and the others were not. Things to think about. And so when you see this, I'm not giving these as excuses, but this was the situation. And we should be so grateful of what surrounds us in terms of wisdom, in terms of the Word of God. And now the only problem we have in this day and age is just not listening to it, right? We have it all. And the world is going in darkness more because there is no lack of Bibles. Is there a lack of Bibles in this country? Yeah, they're printing more than ever before. There is no persecution. No places are getting shut down because they're printing Bibles. But nobody is reading it. Nobody is listening to it. And so we might it's so sad, we might be in a worse position to have all this and still do what the people of old times did. Isn't that sad? Right? And so just giving you a context of how things were. And so I'm not trying to make you guys feel like, yeah, it's kind of sad that they did wrong. But all they had to live by is what comes out of people's mouths and their own conscience. But again, a lot had to be done in terms of personal interest. Probably Joseph was more interested in listening to his dad than the others were. Yeah, we don't want to listen to this old man. We know better, right? Or he just wanted to know who God was, an interest, a curiosity. And then with listening to the voice of God comes God's fear. You can't live an integral life, like a life of integrity, without actually fearing God, right? Do you think it's an important part? The fear of God, right? Yes. Yeah. So that's what I could get in terms of what was happening. But any thoughts on this two topics?
Well, I think it just goes to show that, you know, the Lord can still use us even though that our lives may be in a wreck, and he uses good to come out of all this.
Yes.
You know, and we know that out of this, you know, lineage came Christ.
Yeah.
And so even though we tend to mess things up over and over, the Lord can still take our lives, change them, transform us, and make something beautiful out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. So here, you're done with Potiphar. Almost all this is done. Let's cover the story of the butler and the baker. What happens in the prison? Anybody? Can you summarize? Somebody wants to tell us what happened in the prison. Who is the butler and the baker? Anybody with a microphone? You don't have to read the passage. You guys can just tell. Servants of the king. And then, if you can just paraphrase. I'm just giving you an opportunity to just, so I'm not the one speaking. Yes,
Somehow they upset the king.
Okay.
You know, the Pharaoh, and so he puts them in prison.
Okay. And so what happens? Both of them have a dream. They go and tell it to Joseph, who's the head of the prison guard. And he interprets their dream and actually comes true. One of them was killed. Another guy restored his spot as the cupbearer, right? And while he was there, he again forgot who Joseph was. He forgot the favor that he got, and Joseph is again stuck there. He did something good. Some guy gets restored. Again, just not fair, right? You kind of, some people like, hey, you would expect that you're doing something for them. They would remember you at least, and like, yeah, I was this guy, but they forgot. Until a situation happened where Pharaoh had this stream of nightmares. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He sees the dream. He knows what the dream is, but has no idea. Asks his magicians and whoever is in court. They don't have a clue what that means. He's just not happy with the interpretation that they give. And then finally, the cupbearer remembers, hey, there is a guy who in him is the Spirit of
God.
God.
The living God.
And sorry?
I don't think he was forgotten, because if the cupbearer had a told at that time when he was released from prison and restored back his job.
Yeah.
I think if he told him at that particular time,
Yeah.
this information is no use to him.
Yes.
And so when he had the dream and then told him, hey, there is someone who can.
Yes. So he did not, unless that situation came about where he could use Joseph, it completely, like for example, what the Bible is trying to say here, Genesis 40:23, yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph but forgot him. So by meaning that as soon as he came, he didn't really publicize or say, hey, I came out because of this guy. He didn't say that. He just forgot. I'm happy. I'm out of the prison. And so, yeah.
But God works in mysterious ways.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I agree. And so he sees a dream. He tells there's going to be 7 years. He interprets the dream and says there's 7 years of plenty. And then after 7 years, there's going to be 7 years of
Famine.
And it happens. And he was actually, even before this happens, was Pharaoh happy with the interpretation? Yeah, he was happy because it made sense. And what did he do as a result of that? He appoints Joseph as the guy who's going to be responsible for this whole situation, right? He's going to make sure all the farmers, all of them are kind of coming to him, being accountable. He stores all the grain for the time of famine. Everything goes well. So there is finally some amount of elevation in Joseph's life. The lesson here, we have the second part, or a huge second part of what happens to Joseph's life after this, as how he deals with his brothers, Jacob, and all of that. But just this first part of his life, the lesson is kind of pointing us to kind of seeing the qualities of Joseph with Daniel and Jesus. And I thought we kind of will write that so it kind of is easier to kind of remember it as what we study this week. How is Joseph in similarity with Daniel and Jesus? He interpreted dreams. Thank you. Dreams. Both were slaves. Good, good, very good.
They were both sold for 20 pieces of silver.
Oh, wow. I didn't pay attention to that. Both sold.
Talking about Joseph and Jesus.
20 pieces of silver. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Janice. Yes. Both lifted to high positions, yes. All three people's faith were put to the test. Do you agree? I mean, those tests were not easy. Guy in the lion's den, in the fire, test of what you should eat and not eat, like a week into your schooling. Like, I'm not going to eat this. And he stood for God. Are these easy? Not at all, right? So, extreme test takers. All right. Anything else?
They both depended on God to bring them through.
Oh, all three depended on God, yes. Anything else? Oops. Anything else? That's it. So a lot of interesting parallels between these three people, and kind of it's interesting how they come at different points in the Bible. Genesis, it's so interesting that no one character has received so much coverage in Genesis than Joseph. Not even the patriarchs combined, because Joseph alone gets 13 chapters of the 50. And so that's pretty remarkable. And so it kind of gives us an idea of why it was expanded. God wanted it. God wanted to show that he has a man of integrity in every point in history. It was Noah, it was Abraham, if it was Joseph, it was Daniel, if it was Jesus, and he's looking for the same today, right? People of integrity who will stand for him no matter what, in terms of injustice, in times of severe persecution, in times when you feel like, why are people targeting at me for no reason? In times when you just can't even practice your faith, because that time is coming very soon. So I just want to close with, we have 3 minutes left. If you guys can go to Friday's portion. It's a passage from Education, pages 51 and 52. If I can ask Jeanette, if she can read that part. If you could read that, please. Education 51 and 50, the whole Friday's part.
Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In early life, just as they were passing from youth to manhood, Joseph and Daniel were separated from their homes and carried as captives to heathen lands. Especially was Joseph subject to the temptations that attend great changes of fortune in his father's home, a tenderly cherished child. In the house of Potiphar, a slave, then a confidant and companion, a man of affairs, educated by study, observation, contact with men. In Pharaoh's dungeon, a prisoner of state, condemned unjustly, without hope of vindication or prospect of release, called at a great crisis to the leadership of the nation. What enabled him to preserve his integrity? In his childhood, Joseph had been taught the love and fear of God. often in his father's tent, under the Syrian stars. He had been told the story of the night vision at Bethel, at the ladder from heaven to earth, and the descending and ascending angels, and of him who from the throne above revealed himself to Jacob. He had been told the story of the conflict beside the Jabbok, when, renouncing cherished sins, Jacob stood conqueror and received the title of a prince with God. A shepherd boy tending his father's flocks, Joseph's pure and simple life had favored the development of both physical and mental power. By communion with God through nature and the study of the great truths handed down as a sacred trust from father to son, he had gained strength of mind and firmness of principle. In the crisis of his life, when making that terrible journey from his childhood home in Canaan to the bondage which awaited him in Egypt, looking for the last time on the hills that hid the tents of his kindred, Joseph remembered his father's God. He remembered the lessons of his childhood, and his soul thrilled with the resolve to prove himself true, ever to act as became a subject of the King of Heaven. Ellen G. White, Education, 51 and 52.
Fascinating guy, huh? And we need more Josephs like for this time in history, and maybe rise up to that call. And it's all possible to be that way by the grace of Christ. Amen. All right, let's bow our heads for prayer. Any questions or thoughts? Sorry, anybody? Kind and loving Father, thank you for bringing this beautiful part of the Bible to us. We need more. It's a timely message, and it's a call for us to rise up, dust off all this that has kind of grown into us in terms of fatigue or just boredom or just being lazy in our spiritual life. I pray that you would wake us up to stand up in this really important time in Earth's history. Let us find strength, let us find motivation to the life of Joseph, that you have a plan and you will bring it to pass no matter what events come by from the point we start till the destination. We need your grace, we need your strength. Thank you for this Sabbath. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everybody.